Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pravikarajacharya Shota Shata Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Hare Krishna Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya All right, reading from Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 18. Is this too loud or? Yeah, it seems like it. Hare Krishna. Okay. Kirata, Hunandra, Pulinda, Pokasa, Abhira, Sampha, Yavanaha, Kashadaya, Ye, Anye, Cha, Papa, Yad, Apashraya, Apashrayashraya, Sudhyanti, Tasmai, Prabhavishnave, Namaha, Kiratahundandra Pulinda Puvakasha, Abhira Sambhayavana Kashadaya, Yinye Chapapa Yarapashaya Shaya, Sudhyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. Kiratahunandra Pulinda Pokasha, Abhira Sambhayavana Kashadaya, Yenye Chapapa Yara Yenye Chapapa Yarapashaya Shaya, Sudhyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. Kiratahunandra Pulinda Pokasha, Abhira Sambhayavana Kashadaya, Yenye Chapapa Yarapashaya Shaya, Shrudhyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha.
Papa Yarapashaya Shaya Sudhyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha Kiratahunadra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasarya Yenye Papa Yarapashaya Shaya Shudyanti tasmai Prabha Vishnave
Shudyanti tasmai Prabha Vishnave namaha.
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Abhira Sumbhaya Vanakasadaya
Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasadaya
Yene Chapapa Yad Apashraya Shrayaha
Yecha Papa Yadapashraya Shraya
Suryanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha
Shudyanti tasmai Prabha Vishnave namaha. Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasadaya Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasadaya Yecha Papa Yadapashraya Shraya Yecha Papa Yadapashraya Shraya Shudyanti tasmai Prabha Vishnave namaha
Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasadaya
Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasadaya
Yecha Papa Yadapashraya Shraya
Yenecha Papa Yadapashaya Shaya
Shudyanti tasmai Prabha Vishnave namaha
Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasadaya
Abhira Shumbhaya Vanakasadaya
Yecha Papa Yadapashraya Shraya
Yenecha Papa Yadapashaya Shaya
Tasmai Prabha Vishnave namaha
Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha
Manda, do you just want to try? Okay. All right, word for word. Kirata, a province of old Bharata. Huna, a part of Germany and Russia. Andhra, a province of southern India. Pulinda, the Greeks. Pulkashaha, another province. Abhira, part of old Sindh. Shumbaha, another province. Yavanaha, the Turks. Kasha, Adayaha, the Mongolian province. Yea, even those. Anye, others. Cha, also. Papa, addicted to sinful acts. Yat, whose? Apashraya, ashraya, having taken shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Sudhanti, at once purified. Tasmai, unto him. Prabha Vishnave, unto the powerful Vishnu. Namaha, my respectful obeisances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Okay. Translation. Kiratas, Hundas, Andras, Pulindas, Pulkashas, Habiras, Sumbhas, Yavanas, members of the Kasha races, and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Purport. Kirata, a province of old Bharatavarsha mentioned in Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata. Generally, the Kiratas are known as the aboriginal tribes of India, and in modern days, the Santal Parganas in Bihar and Chotanagpur might comprise the old province named Karata. Huna, the area of East Germany and part of Russia, is known as the province of the Hunas. Accordingly, sometimes a kind of hill tribe is known as the Hunas. Andhra, a province in southern India mentioned in the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata. It is still extant under the same name. Pulinda. It is mentioned in the Mahabharata, Shabha Parva 26:10. Yeah, anyways. Viz, the inhabitants of the province of the name of Pulinda. This country was conquered by Bhishma Sena and Sahadev. The Greeks are known as Pulindas, and it is mentioned in the Varna Parva of the Mahabharata that the non-Vedic race of this part of the world would rule over the world. This Pulinda province was also one of the provinces of Bharata, and the inhabitants were classified amongst the Kshatriya kings. But later on, due to their giving up the Brahminical culture, they were mentioned as Malechas, just as those who are not followers of Islamic culture are called kafirs, and those who are not followers of the Christian culture are called heathens. Abira. This name also appears in the Mahabharata, both in the Shabha Parva and the Bhishma Parva. It is mentioned that this province was situated on the river Saraswati in Sindh. The modern Sindh province formerly extended to the other side of the Arabian Sea, and all the inhabitants of that province were known as the Abiras. They were under the domination of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and according to the statements of Markandeya, the Malechas of this part of the world would also rule over Bharata. Later on, this proved to be true, as in the case of the Pulindas. On behalf of the Pulindas, Alexander the Great conquered India, and on behalf of the Abiras, Muhammad Ghori conquered India. These Abiras were also formerly Kshatriyas within the Brahminical culture, but they gave up the connection. The Kshatriyas who were afraid of Parashuram and had hid themselves in the Caucasian hilly regions later on became known as the Abiras, and the place they inhabited was known as Abiradesh, Shumbhas, or Kankas. The inhabitants of the Kanka province of Old Bharata mentioned the Mahabharata. Yavanas. Yavana was the name of one of the sons of Maharaj Yati, who was given the part of the world known as Turkey to rule. Therefore, the Turks are Yavanas due to being descendants of Maharaj Yavana. Yavanas were therefore Kshatriyas, and later on, by giving up Brahminical culture, they became Malecha Yavanas. Descriptions of the Yavanas are in the Mahabharata. A prince called Turvasu was also known as Yavana, Adiparva 80-26. And his country was conquered by Sahadev, one of the Pandavas. The western Yavanas joined with Duryodhana in the Battle of Kurukshetra under the pressure of Karna. It was foretold that these Yavanas would conquer India, and it proved to be true. Kasha. The inhabitants of Kashadesh are mentioned in the Mahabharata Drona Parva. Those who have a stunted growth of hair on the upper lip are generally called Kashas. As such, Kashas are the Mongolians, the Chinese, and others who are so designated. The above-mentioned historical names are different nations of the world. Even those who are constantly engaged in sinful acts are all corrigible to the standard of perfect human beings if they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Jesus Christ and Muhammad, two powerful devotees of the Lord, have done tremendous service on behalf of the Lord on the surface of the globe. And from the version of Srila Sukadeva Goswami, it appears that instead of running a godless civilization in the present context of the world situation, if the leaders of the world affairs is entrusted to the devotees of the Lord, for which a worldwide organization under the name and style of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has already been started, then by the grace of the Almighty Lord, there can be a thorough change of heart in human beings all over the world, because the devotees of the Lord are able authorities to effect such a change by purifying the dust-worn minds of the people in general. The politicians of the world may remain in their respective positions because the pure devotees of the Lord are not interested in political leadership or diplomatic implications. The devotees are interested only in seeing that the people in general are not misguided by political propaganda, and in seeing that the valuable life of a human being is not spoiled in following a type of civilization which is ultimately doomed. If the politicians, therefore, would be guided by good counsel of the devotees, then certainly there would be a great change in the world by the purifying propaganda of the devotees, as shown by Lord Chaitanya. As Sukadeva Goswami began one of his prayers with the word Yat Kirtanam, so Lord Chaitanya also recommended that simply by glorification of the Lord's holy name, a tremendous change of heart can take place, by which the complete misunderstanding between human nations created by politicians can at once be extinguished. And after the extinction of the fire of misunderstanding, other prophets will follow. The destination is to go back home, back to Godhead, as we have several times discussed in these pages. According to the cult of devotion, generally known as Vaishnav cult, there is no bar against anyone's advancing in the matter of God realization. A Vaishnava is powerful enough to turn into Vaishnavas, even the Kiratas, etc., as above mentioned. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:32, it is said by the Lord that there is no bar to becoming a devotee of the Lord, even for those who are low-born, or for women, Sudras, or Vaishyas. And whoever becomes a devotee is eligible to return home back to Godhead. The only qualification is that one takes shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord who has thorough knowledge of the transcendental science of Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Anyone from any part of the world who becomes well conversant in the science of Krishna becomes a pure devotee and a spiritual master for the general mass of people, and may reclaim them by purification of heart. Though a person may be even the most sinful man, he at once can be purified by systematic contact with a pure Vaishnava. A Vaishnava, therefore, can accept a bona fide disciple from any part of the world without consideration of caste and creed, and promote him by regulative principles to the status of a pure Vaishnava, who is transcendental to rabbinical culture. The system of caste or varnashram dharma is no longer regular even amongst the so-called followers of the system. Nor is it now possible to reestablish the institutional function in the present context of social, political, and economic revolution. Without any reference to the particular custom of a country, one can be accepted into the Vaishnava cult spiritually, and there is no hindrance in the transcendental process. So by the order of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the cult of Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita can be preached all over the world, reclaiming all persons willing to accept transcendental cult. Such cultural propaganda by the devotees will certainly be accepted by all persons who are reasonable and inquisitive, without any particular basis for the custom of the country. The Vaishnava never accepts another Vaishnava on the basis of birthright, just as he never thinks of the deity of the Lord in a temple as an idol. And to remove all doubts in this connection, Srila Sukadeva Goswami has invoked the blessings of the Lord, who is all-powerful, Prabhu Vishnave Namaha. Just as stone, wood, or metal is transcendently charged when the all-powerful Lord, in his form as the worshipable deity in the temple, accepts the humble service of his devotee in the devotional activities of archana, so the body of a pure Vaishnava at once changes transcendentally when he gives himself up to the service of the Lord and is trained by a qualified Vaishnava. The injunction of the Vaishnava regulations in this connection runs as follows: Arche Vishnau Shiladir Gurushu Nara Matir Vaishnave Jati Budhi Shri Vishnur Namni Matre Shabda Shamanaya Buddhi, etc. One should not consider the deity of the Lord as worship in the temple to be an idol, nor should one consider the authorized spiritual master an ordinary man. Nor should one consider a pure Vaishnava to belong to a particular caste, nor should one consider the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra a material sound vibration, etc. Padma Purana. The conclusion is that the Lord, being all-powerful, can, under any and every circumstance, accept anyone from any part of the world, either personally or through his bona fide manifestation as the spiritual master. Lord Chaitanya accepted many devotees from communities other than the Varnashramites, and he himself declared to teach us that he does not belong to any caste or social order of life, but that he is the eternal servant of the Lord, who maintains the damsels of Vrindavan, Lord Krishna. That is the way of self-realization. Om Jnana Timanandasya Gananjanjana Salakaya Chakshurumnitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kanamayam Dadati Swabadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriuta Parakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnamam Shah Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganavtam Vitam Tam Shajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Bhadan Sagana Naritam Shri Vishakamitam Shah Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhakti Vikas Swami Nityanamane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nevi Sheshi Sunivari Pashyatara Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Kirata, Hundas, Andras, Pulindas, Pulakasas, Abiras, Shumbas, Yavanas, members of the Kasa races, and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. All righty. So this is a long purport. And long purport means every purport in Srila Prabhupada's book means there's some important information, but specifically purports, and well, some purports in the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and Srila Prabhupada's books are longer than others to really bring out a point. So this verse is an important verse in the sense that Srila Prabhupada cited it regularly. And it's also cited in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I didn't have time to look exactly in the context and things like that, and probably even if I did look into it, I wouldn't have time to talk about that. So this verse is important, mainly for the fact that it's relevant to mostly all of our lives, in the sense that that even those who are outside of the pure Vedic culture, or for lack of a better word, are completely impious, that they can also become purified and take up to the process of Krishna consciousness. This verse also shows the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and also the power of his devotees. Because, I mean, this verse, so these Sukadeva Goswami is glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead for different things in these verses. That, I mean, we're chanting them and learning them, but just to cite one of them, for instance. Well, it's mainly glorifying his... so anyways, just one here. So this is the one we're learning now. So I'll offer my effectual ovations of the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses and destroyer of further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotees. So the point being is that this is a remarkable quality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is that he's, the word cited here, Prabhavishnave, unto the powerful Vishnu. So Vishnu is so the mood there is that Vishnu is so powerful, and his devotees are so powerful that they can purify those of sinful acts. Anyways, I'll get a little bit more into that later. But so this verse particularly, it's mentioned all these different places and these, I guess, members of society, and gives like the English equivalents of that. So this verse, it could be impacted in so many ways and understood in so many ways. And I'm sure there's devotees who have really analyzed some of these different tribes and given the history and things like that. You could really dig into it. This verse and some of these things may be of interest to those who are deeply not interested and knowledgeable in history and things like that. So Srimad Bhagavatam has something for everybody there, and it's just a matter of us understanding that and bringing that out and giving it to them. So all these different cultures and things are mentioned about how, some of them are mentioned how some of these individuals left, like the Yavanas, the descendants of Maryati, they went to Turkey, and then the other one is mentioned that what is this? If I can see it, but Bhrigupati, he chased out the Kshatriyas out of India. So the kind of underlying thread of all these, and the main point, is that these individuals, they retreat somehow or other. They left the land of Bharatavarsha, and as time went on, they became disconnected from the spiritual root and the connection. They began to give up Brahminical culture. I think it's mentioned here in one of the things that they gave up Brahminical culture. And the Yavanas. They were Kshatriyas, and later on, by giving up Brahminical culture, they became Malechi Yavanas. So this is the kind of the underlying thread that ties them all into it. And generally, I mean, it's understood, maybe becoming less now, but in the maybe the 60s or whatever, it was understood that India was a spiritual place, Bharatavarsha. So, and I remember reading one book, and some man was, having some, out-of-body experiences, and that was like something new. So he told one of his friends about that, and his friend told him, "Oh, you should go to India because people they have like yogis and things and have mystic powers, so you can like go there and learn more about what you're experiencing." And also, India is known for like karma, reincarnation, so many different things that are understood. Reincarnation specifically is something that people are widely known of. So India is known as a spiritual place, and then the Himalayas and things and all that. So there's a underlying just known spiritual culture being connected to India. And then so you see also, without getting so much into it, that you have, the Greeks and their, anyways, you growing up, they just call everything mythology, but anyways, the Greek and what they believed in. And there's Norse also, what they understood, without getting all into that. And there's some, they have like demigods and things like that, and an understanding of like hellish regions and heavenly regions, some parallels to the Vedic culture. And there's more also, even the systems of divination and things. They like that. I forget which, but there's cultures like there, and then the omens and things. That was all we see that in that's mentioned in Krishna book, and that's a part of Vedic culture. All these different sciences. So there's traces of Vedic culture in all these races and things, and that's an area of research for one to get into and to understand deeply, and that can be explained to other people also. So I think you have that book, Vishnu, that talks about some of these things, right? That that book in your room by one of our godbrothers, that Mahabharat book, it talks about like these races and things. Yeah. So there's some of those things are there. And so, but when one becomes disconnected from the Vedic culture and everything, it's centered around worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also living in the world and taking care of one's material needs, but in a pious, God-centered way, without losing track. Some people are able to keep track more than others. It's generally understood, and it's expected that the Brahmanas are able to keep the main focus, that they don't become confused about what the purpose of life is. Whereas other members may become confused. A Kshatriya may become, get into the habit of thinking, just like was being taught to Prahlad Maharaj in the demoniac Gurukul, that that this is your friend and this is your enemy. politics and things like this. And he was saying, well, I don't, there is no such thing as a friend or enemy on the spiritual platform. So this is a position of a Vaishnava, but a Kshatriya, they have to see like that this person is an enemy, and this is a problem, and this person's a wrongdoer. He has to be punished. Not that this. What is this? I don't remember this verse, but Brahmani Gavahasni Suni Chaiva Sapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. So a Pandit sees everything on the equal platform, but living in the mature world, one may see and understand that the spirit soul is in each individual, but I have to interact with each person differently according to their conditioning. So a Kshatriya rules and has to think in that way. So, and then different, Vaishya may get caught up with too much, whatever, making too much money or whatever, and a Sudra just may get overwhelmed by drugs and liquor and sense gratification. But even a Brahmana too can get confused about the goal of life. There was one individual, I forget who, it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it was, I think Lord Chaitanya criticized him for becoming a bookworm. He was reading so many books, and he was saying you won't find the absolute truth by reading so many different books in that sense. So one can become bewildered by too much knowledge. So the pure devotees of the Lord, the Vaishnavas, they know what the actual path is. So when one loses track of the path and doesn't understand, what's to be done, what's not to be done, loses track of the platform of absolute knowledge and gets disconnected, doesn't know what Dharma is anymore, likely then one will fall into sinful activities or dharmic activities. Because if you don't know what's to be done and what's not to be done, then how do you know what the right thing is? Just like if you don't take any driving lessons and you have no clue of the rules of driving, and then you just go out on the street and drive, you won't know whether to drive on the left side, the right side. When you get to a stoplight or light, what is red, yellow, green? What does that mean? But you might be able to understand what a stop sign means if you read English. But then, there's speed limits, and then residential areas, and then the highway. And then the highway has a minimum speed limit. Usually it's like 40 or something. You can't go below that. And you go on the highway and start driving 10 miles an hour. That usually happens sometimes. People are so intoxicated, they're on the highway driving 10 miles an hour, and then they get pulled over and then arrested. So it's a common thing. Anyway, I don't think it's that common, but it does happen that people are driving too slow on the highway because they're so intoxicated. Or what happens is that people, they're so intoxicated, they get on the highway, but they get on the wrong side of the highway, and then they get into a crash. So if we don't understand what's to be done and what's not to be done, then unknowingly we may commit sinful activity. So, but when you have a civilization that becomes disconnected from Dharma, and as time goes on, and then they develop laws and things, and then they have their whole society based on irreligious principles, so they may seem to be correct on the moral platform. Just like nowadays, according to Manu Samhita, it is understood and accepted that one who is a killer, who is killing people, who is a murderer, they should be murdered. And that frees them from their sinful activities. And then the next life, they get freed from that, and then they don't have to be killed again. But then it's being put forward that, well, to kill someone is immoral, so therefore you just give them a sentence in the jail for 250 years and, triple life sentence, and then they'll serve that out. But the thing is that, but then these people, they go into jail, and then, there's different things, that can be analyzed. But they go into jail, and then they, they just do more crimes, or they kill people in the jail, or whatever. They just cause more problems in the jail. Or whatever. But so there's all these different things. So when one is becoming disconnected and just degraded, then the whole society is based on sinful principles. And when society is based on sinful principles, bad things happen, like irregular weather changes and starvation and natural calamities like earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, drought, extreme heat, extreme cold. Crops get destroyed. These are natural calamities. The demigods are in control of these things. So, but that knowledge is lost, and then one doesn't see the connection. First of all, one doesn't have the knowledge that these things are being ruled by higher powers, and then one also loses the knowledge that by engaging in sinful activity, these things come about. So then there's a disconnection, and then people try to understand it scientifically, and there may be some scientific understanding to it. So this is what happens on a a macro social level. And so the point is that proper knowledge has to be established. And so Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport about how, he says, I'm paraphrasing because this is such a long purport, and there's so much that can be said about this actually. You can speak on this purport for days. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is meant to instruct the leaders of the world about what pretty much in spiritual knowledge, and what we read in the Bhagavad Gita and what we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that knowledge we're meant to learn that knowledge and instruct that onto the politicians and leaders. And what did it say? So, that's actually a huge point in Srila Prabhupada's books. That's an instruction right there. And are we doing that? I'm not so sure, but we should be trying to do that. Instruct leaders in the science of Krishna consciousness. And instruct them in the science of Krishna consciousness. There's so many things that they can be instructed in. So one thing is that we obviously have to have faith in the Shastra. What we're speaking, what we're reading, and that we have to be convinced, because otherwise we go to speak to some big leader of a country, but then it's like we're scared to tell them what it says in the Bhagavad Gita about that if you engage in sinful activity, then you'll suffer, that there'll be these natural calamities. But if we don't want to say that, or we might fry them out or whatever. There might be might have to speak in a way that they can understand, but our speaking and what the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is should be the same. Not that there's a different conclusion understood. So Prabhupada makes the point here is that this, let me see if I can find it exactly. But he says that, let's see here. I'm not seeing it. It's a big purport. It might be somewhere else. But he makes the point that this, here it is. That so if the politicians therefore would be guided by the good counsel of the devotees, then certainly there would be a great change in the world by the purifying propaganda of the devotees as showed by Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya, we can look at his life and study his life, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita is there for that, and teaching of Lord Chaitanya, to understand what exactly Prabhupada's meaning here by this purifying propaganda. Lord Chaitanya taught by his example of practicing the duties of the particular ashram that he was in, though he's above, obviously, all ashram considerations, as shown by the pastime of Lord Nityananda breaking his sannyas rod. He did show by practical example the actual standard of what a sannyasi is. He spoke Krishna consciousness, he preached it, he didn't associate with the opposite sex at all. There was no scandals or anything like that. And he preached Krishna consciousness. He cited from Shastra. He didn't concoct anything like that. And he established the Sankirtan movement. And then he taught his devotees also to, like this Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and others to, similarly to, and now also he established I'm forgetting the exact word, excavating, refurbishing the holy places. And also to writing literatures and distributing literatures, Krishna conscious books. So this is some of the depth into the purifying propaganda of Lord Chaitanya, but this preaching of the holy name. And so this is one of the facets into changing to make whole nations Krishna conscious nations. So this distributing books and people reading the books, and then also advising the leaders of society. The thing is that if we don't, anyways, it goes a long way, but if we don't know what Lord Chaitanya taught or what Srila Prabhupada taught, and then we try to advise people or we try to preach, then we may get something funny, which I couldn't figure out the exact word for it, but something along the lines of not mentioning Krishna and not speaking anything about Krishna or Krishna consciousness, but telling people to be better people and to be positive and to have self-worth and things like that. And anyways, you went to one of those things, Chandan. Anyways, we won't say the name, but you went to one. You snuck into that place. and distributed books. So we'll be making videos and things, but we won't be preaching Krishna consciousness. So there'll actually be no benefit into that. And what's needed actually is to straightforwardly represent the acharyas and preaching Krishna consciousness and advising political leaders onto the actual verdict of Shastra. That's the duty of a Brahmana or of a Vaishnav, that they understand Shastra and they speak that. And people get benefited from that. And that's why Vaishnavas, and Brahmanas, they preach and they speak, because they understand the science of Krishna. And they have faith in that also. So they're qualified to speak. One who doesn't have faith in the Shastra and doesn't understand what Shastra is, his speaking will just confuse people into what actually Krishna consciousness is. So this motivation speaking, all this nonsense is not what Srila Prabhupada is speaking of in this purport that's going to make a change in the world, actually. It's the Yat Kirtanam. As Sukadeva Goswami is explaining, he's the glorification of the Lord's holy name. That's what Srila Prabhupada says, that will make a tremendous change in the heart. And from that, it will complete, Prabhupada says here, complete misunderstanding between, it will eradicate the misunderstanding between nations and politicians. So that's the formula given here. And so the point of all this is that, misunderstandings may go away, and there may still, just due to the nature of the material world, even though a nation may be Krishna conscious, as we see in the history. There was one, I think it was Krishna Dev Roy and Maharaj Prataparudra, but they were engaged in war. The two great Vaishnavas, they were fighting. So just because it's the nature of the material world, there may still be enmity and fighting and things like that. But the point is that if this knowledge is taught and it's established in society, then the point will be, the goal of it all will be achieved, which is to go back home, back to Godhead. And Prabhupada makes that point here, that we've discussed this as we've discussed several times, discussed in these pages. So that's the point. There will always be some misfortune or unfortunate circumstance in the material world. Nobody will be fully happy, blissed out all the time. There will always be some problem or something like that. I remember I was hearing in the class yesterday, it was in the Bhakti Vikas Maharaj was explaining, I forget the exact quote, somewhere in the Ramayana, but I think Lord Ramachandra was explaining that that nobody's fully happy in the material world. That there's always that no one's fully, absolutely 100% happy. In the sense that there's always some problem. Of course, one that's a devotee and the one that's in Krishna consciousness, they're happy and they're satisfied. But in the material world, there's always some problem. You may be Krishna conscious and out distributing books, and then if you may be getting kicked out of the spot, or someone may be arguing with you. Or we see even Srila Prabhupada, that he was, 100% pure devotee, but then his disciples were giving some type of problem and some, whatever, disobeying him and things like that. And even too, he showed the pastime of health problems. So there's always some inconvenience in the material world. And one has to learn just to accept that. So, but the point is going back home, back to Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada makes the point, going into the next purport, is that anybody can go back home, back to Godhead. That there's no bar for that. But materially speaking, there is a bar for things. And people don't like to accept that, and it's all equal. Anybody can do anything, and anyone can achieve anything. But it's not true. There's not everybody can go to, the Ivy League schools. Unfortunately, if someone's, not very intelligent, stupid, they can't go to the whatever, Harvard or Oxford or things like that, because they don't have the sufficient brain power for it. And then they may, then that's discrimination. And then you make a program to where, people that aren't so intelligent, they can go into the big time schools. There's a course for them. But the understanding of these courses, that it's for highly intellectual people to study that. And then even within the colleges, there's different courses for people, like for instance, someone's going to study the history of whatever, of toasters, and then one's going to study the history of engineering. It's a little bit more complicated. So there's differences on the material platform, in intellect and strength and beauty and all these different things. There's differences. But on the spiritual platform of Krishna consciousness, anybody can take up to that. Anybody can become fully Krishna conscious. Krishna makes this point in the Bhagavad Gita. Our acharyas make it also, and it's mentioned in this purport. So there's no bar in regards to that. So Krishna consciousness is for anybody and everybody. And and so going back to what I was speaking earlier, is that the one aspect of the power of Vishnu, or Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is that he can purify those who, anybody, what is it here? I think the point is mentioned that everyone and anyone from any part of the world can take up to the process of Krishna consciousness, which means one thing is that there's no end to the scope of preaching Krishna consciousness, of spreading Krishna consciousness. It's full game. Anyone, everyone can take to the process of Krishna consciousness in some form or the other, by taking prasadam, of hearing the holy name, of getting books, of distributing books, of engaging in the process of Krishna consciousness. The scope is unlimited. And so another angle of looking at this also is that the conditioned soul in the material world has so many impurities, and we generally look at just one person's life and see them, that this person, whatever, has this bad habit, that has this bad habit, okay. But the thing is that these bad habits may have been something that one's had birth after birth after birth. For so many lives, one may have had this material contamination, and it's carrying it over. But the power of Krishna consciousness is so strong that one can be addicted to sinful activities for millions and millions and billions of years. But by coming into contact with the association of devotees and Vaishnavas, one can be purified and be freed from that tendency, that sinful tendency. And also too, and one may be, outright sinful, killing people, but one also too may be pious, but piously avoiding Krishna. That is also not good. That is also sinful. So Krishna consciousness can change everybody's mind, can change everybody's heart. And that's one of the wonderful aspects of Krishna, of his strength, of his power, is that if the living entity is willing, that the one's complete nature or makeup can be completely changed, or not changed, but can become purified. Because that dormant Krishna consciousness is situated in everybody's heart. What is this verse? Nitya said a Krishna Das. So that's already there. And so by the association of the devotees, so generally we see that it's through the devotee association. There's, like we read Bhagavad Gita, but we don't really understand it. But then when we come in contact with the devotees of the Lord, then we begin to understand what Krishna is speaking in the Bhagavad Gita, and the purification of the heart commences. Srila Prabhupada makes an interesting point here. I wrote it down, but he said, but pretty much the idea of systematic, what does he say? Anyway, systematic contact, that anybody can become purified. So that's another aspect of having these temples, of having a regular association, is that one can come into that association and take up to the process of Krishna consciousness by regularly hearing and regularly associating. The purification happens. If one becomes attached to the association of devotees, that individual will become Krishna conscious and will take seriously to the process of Krishna consciousness, because the purification will act. Srila Prabhupada, I was reading the other day, he was in London. He mentioned this also too in New York, but he was just saying how he wasn't really so interested in, not so interested, but he was just saying how, like, we go to these places and people come and we speak and they hear once and it's okay, but he was making the point that a center has to be established so that they can regularly hear. And he was also too, I believe, feeling that way, because he was talking in the first in 1966 in that ashram, Dr. Mishra, and he went out and got this property at 26th Avenue, and so he had his established place. So he was speaking regularly, and people were coming, and so that way they could get association and take up to the process of Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport somewhere, if I can find it, but he says that even the most sinful can, I'm paraphrasing probably, but they can take up to the process of Krishna consciousness. So it's interesting because maybe sometimes we feel otherwise. That, because there's that saying, I've heard it and we've all said it, that you go for the ripe fruits, that, that person's just ready for Krishna consciousness, they're like, they're interested in kirtan, or they're vegetarian, or they're single, they're 19 or 18, they're not in college or whatever, they're ready to be a full-time, devotee and join the ashram. So that's one way of seeing it. But then, when we see, then some people, they're really far away from Krishna consciousness. It's, the guy on the street who, is talking to himself, and his life and blood is illicit sex, gambling, drinking, and eating meat. That's how that's his life heirs. He's not very so close to Krishna consciousness, or we might be wasting our time with that. But one who is extremely powerful in Krishna consciousness, he can transform anybody's hearts, and then he has that faith. And though he may not go and speak to that person heavily and things, but he understands that, well, give this person prasadam, that everybody in all walks of life, they can come closer to Krishna by engaging in one aspect of Krishna consciousness, whether that be reading the books, hearing the holy name. Even Prabhupada said one time, I forget, I think it was in India or something, the devotees were chanting or something, and then there was some workers, they were making fun of the devotees and them chanting or something like that. So he said, even, Prabhupada said something along the lines that they are benefited just by making fun of the devotees, they're chanting. And then also too, Prabhupada would cite these unfavorable news articles that, they're chanting Hare Krishna and things like that. So there's some purification. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would explain that, he would ask, how many times does it say Krishna in the article? And this is a good article. So the Mahabhagavats and great highly elevated devotees, they have a different vision when they look at the world. And when they see people and when they see things, they don't just, it's not that they don't see, whatever they don't see the conditioning, but they may see the conditioning, but ultimately they see the essence of the person, which is that this is an individual who is disconnected from Krishna, and somehow or other, how can we bring these people to Krishna consciousness? And we see Srila Prabhupada felt like that and thought like that. Though it may not have been, so evident at all times, but he, why was he establishing all these temples and doing Rath Yatra and all this preaching work? Because he had the compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. And in Srila Prabhupada's life also, this verse is very relevant because it's speaking about him, because he went out to, I don't even know, I don't think America is mentioned in these verses. Oh, it is mentioned actually. It's because, what does it say here? This, Anye cha papaha, others who are addicted to sinful acts. So it's just, the other category, so they don't even need to name the place. So Srila Prabhupada came to the Western world and still is being continued by his disciples of purifying those lands and bringing people to Krishna consciousness. And that's their power, that's their strength actually. Because even, big yogis, the world's strongest man, he can, whatever, I don't know, whoever the world's strongest man is, but even if you have some guy super strong, he can go and whatever, punch down a tree with his bare hands or something like that. Or we see with, what was his name? Banasura was punching mountains down with his fist because he was, so powerful. Even, Banasura was so powerful, but he couldn't, not the point isn't being emphasized, but he couldn't control his daughter in the sense that his daughter became attracted to Aniruddha, and he wasn't able to do anything about it. He captured Aniruddha, and then he was defeated by Krishna ultimately, but his daughter's heart was captured by Aniruddha. Even in before that actually, one of her girlfriends, Chitraleka, she, by her mystic power, she was able to show Usa in her dream who was the man that she saw, because she had a dream and she saw Aniruddha. And so Chitra went and she brought Aniruddha to Banasura's capital. I forget, I think Shontipura or something like that. So Banasura was so powerful, but he couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't all powerful. He had so much strength. But the thing is that strength, beauty, influence, all these things, we see that Lord Chaitanya actually, he was able to change the nature of individuals and bring them to the platform of Krishna consciousness. And that's actually the real strength of the devotees and of Vishnu, is that he's able to change the nature of the conditioned souls and not only purify them of their sinful reactions, but also impel them and inspire them to take shelter, to surrender, saranagati, fully under the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's the real power of the devotees. And so they're empowered. That's what the Shakti Avesh avatar of preaching the cult of Krishna consciousness. That's the real empowerment, actually. And Prabhupada would explain that. Even to be empowered in that way, one may not be so intellectual. One may not be so, so many things. One may be disqualified in so many aspects materially. But if one is sincerely preaching Krishna consciousness and surrender, one can inspire so many people to take up to the path of Krishna consciousness. And this is something that it cannot be faked. We were talking with Chandanacharya Prabhu the other day about that, is that you can't fake genuine Krishna consciousness of what it means to be Krishna conscious. I mean, we can do different things and, show that, whatever I'm a great devotee or I'm very advanced, or we can say, well, I'm very advanced and this and that. We can say those things and speak those things, but it's shown by one's purity, by one's behavior, by one's life. You can't fake being genuinely Krishna conscious. And so those who are connected and empowered in that way, they deliver so many people and they attract so many people to Krishna consciousness. Or maybe they may not attract, hundreds and thousands of people, but they attract at their own level and where they're staying or where they're preaching or where they're living, people to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so this verse is highlighting that, the Lord's supreme power, Prabhu Vishnu, is that he purifies those individuals who are addicted. And so for most of us, especially for myself, we can connect to that and see and understand that, before coming to Krishna consciousness, so many sinful activities, how are you going to come over all that? Remember wondering that one day. So many bad activities, just understanding that, just being addicted to sinful acts and just by force carrying those out and not being able to stop that, how to overcome that. And so that was only by the association of devotees is that possible. And so it's a big work, because actually this it has to continue, it has to be done, and it's difficult, and there's arguments and impediments and so many different things. But the International Society of Krishna Consciousness was, as Prabhupada makes a point, one of the points is that it was established to change this sinful nature for this, and to establish what real proper knowledge is, and to give guidance to the leaders of society. And by instructing the leaders of society and giving them this knowledge, one can make a change for the better of society and help everybody in all spheres. And if that's not possible at the current stage or whatever the situation is, then one has to do whatever he can to establish Krishna consciousness in the lives of people who are close by or within the city or the country or whatever the situation may be. The mass propaganda program. And so, anyways, there's a couple angles at this verse. I mean, there's so much that could be said. Oh, one last thing I wanted to say. I mean, I'm not going to cover it all, but there's one small thing, and it's a big thing, and I mean, I'm not going to get into it so much, but just slightly get into it just to make the point. Prabhupada makes a point in here about that the Varnashram system is not possible to establish. And so sometimes devotees say, well, it says here that it's not possible, and it's not there, so therefore Prabhupada didn't want to do that. But Srila Prabhupada makes the point, well, first of all, one has to look into exactly what Srila Prabhupada's talking about. What does he mean exactly that is not possible and it can't be established and things like that? Like how one has to really understand that, what Srila Prabhupada, the point that Srila Prabhupada's making and everything. But another point is that, which is a bigger point, that Srila Prabhupada makes a point in the 7th canto. Anyways, I don't have to pull it up, but I know where it's at. But it's Canto 7, Chapter 11, text 18 to 20. The last sentence of the purport, Prabhupada says, I think it's the last sentence, might be the second to last, but he says that the Krishna conscious movement is a movement full of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, but it's meant to establish the Daivi Varnashram institution or system in society. So Prabhupada's taking point in that part, but that's the Krishna conscious movement is meant to establish the Daivi Varnashram. So it has to be reconciled with this, and then we also see in Srila Prabhupada's audio and his speaking and his teachings and speaking that he wanted to establish Varnashram and teach people how to be Brahmins, how to be Vaishyas, how to be Sudras, how to be Kshatriyas. He wanted to create farm communities to show simple living and high thinking and to show this complete Varnashram system. So that, anyways, just to touch on that slightly. So Srila Prabhupada, it's not that this sentence is just completely throwing out Varna and ashram and no such thing, because Srila Prabhupada, he didn't actually teach that. So that just has to be understood a little bit in depth, what Srila Prabhupada is making the point in the purport and what he's explaining. So anyways, I want to stop there now if there's any questions or comments about anything.
So then in this purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions about this world, guiding world leaders in establishing the Krishna consciousness movement for that purpose. Sometimes when you read that, you wonder, well, even in our society, we're not able to manage such a small society with such a small number of people, and there's so many. It's just like, sometimes I've had discussions with Chandan also about this, like the work ethic within the movement is sometimes so bad compared to the work ethics outside.
Yeah.
Because here it's voluntary, and then it's really difficult sometimes to reason with people. Whereas outside they get stuff done, and just more systematic and organized. So you just wondering, about that, because if somebody were to ask a question like that sometimes, and especially from members of the public, it could be pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
Because, so. Any thoughts on that matter?
Yeah, just the members of public, where your movement's disorganized and kind of like that.
Yeah.
Well, one thing is that
basically, people are, well, what qualification do you have to speak about guiding world leaders when you yourselves are not able to organize amongst yourselves as so-called spiritually realized people?
That's an interesting. Well, one thing that pops into mind is that, leaders in and of themselves, like a president or something, is not, from what I've seen, just kind of just a little bit of research I've done into different world leaders and things like that, and just different individuals that were extremely powerful, world leaders in history. They generally there was that person was in charge of kind of the head, but they also had a cabinet and a whole entourage of people around them, which they would advise and speak to and make decisions and overcharge things. So we have this spiritual knowledge and this understanding, which is intrinsic to human society. And whatever. Some people just they may not be expert managers or whatever, like how you have in society. Just due to how. Anyways, what's what I'm looking for, but just how new the movement is and everything. Right. But we have a duty to. Yeah, no. But we have a duty to give that spiritual knowledge and to teach that, and that's That's the Brahminical duty. That's the duty of one who has the knowledge, that he has to share it with others and guide. And just like, whatever, the president has his cabinet and people he's associated with, the president is whatever. The president is, there's different people that are capable of, ruling, of managing and getting things done, but then they may not be so capable of understanding, whatever, the spiritual intricacies of the knowledge. So then that person is trained in that, and then you have a separate person that's trained in ruling society. And so, whatever, we may have problems in society, but the knowledge, if you actually look at it, it's perfect. It makes sense. So we have something to share and something to tell people. And so, like that. And so, whatever. Yeah, we got to get the management together, but that'll take time. Anyways, the whole other thing.
Yeah, my understanding is somehow if we remain loyal to the knowledge aspect and
Yeah.
and we were to somehow stick to the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, if we can impress upon people that there is the knowledge here, you all have practical ability, like Prabhupada gave the example of the lame man and the blind man, then there can be all-round cooperation for the benefit of human society in general. You have wonderful capabilities, you're wonderful managers, but if you don't have this knowledge, then how will you manage?
Yeah.
So you all can come up with the solutions on how to implement this knowledge
Yeah.
in some practical field, but we have the knowledge.
Yeah. One thing that just popped into my mind when you were speaking is that Srila Prabhupada makes a point in the purport. I don't want to go look for it, but he says that pretty much we're not trying to occupy the post of like a politician or something. Like we're just trying to like advise. And so that's like you're saying there, it's like working together. Not we're trying to like kick out some party and like we can't manage our society, so like let us like manage your society. So something else.
Okay, you go ahead.
Hare Krishna?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Okay. So, Kalki Prabhu, I was thinking very much so that this verse is actually a prediction of Srila Prabhupada's appearance in this world, That, Prabhupada is a person who actually predicted that he has come and spread the holy name of the Lord to all the people of all these different races and all that, and has converted them into pure devotees of Krishna, And we see the effect of Srila Prabhupada's preaching even today. And we will see for the next 10,000 years at least. I was thinking about that. Do you have anything to say about that? Because I have another point.
You kind of said it all, that, Srila Prabhupada, this verse is predicting Srila Prabhupada, and then also, Srila Prabhupada, he preached in all these different places and spread Krishna consciousness, and his being connected was this Prabhu Vishnu. What does it say exactly? There's something, but...
Shuddhyanti tasmai Prabhu Vishnu.
Yeah. But, you said it. Verse predictions.
Another point also is when we were in Philly, Vishnu Gada Prabhu, he actually told us that he did some research work into some other Prabhupada disciples. And, he asked the question to these Prabhupada disciples that, although this verse says that the Andhras, Andhras are the Telugu people, they're considered to be like the most fallen. How did they even become fallen in the first place? And after that, we see that the Andhras are the people who actually like, the Telugu people are like, when we distribute books, to Indians, we always see the Telugu guys are the most highest guys. They buy the most amount of books, they give the most amount of donations. So how do we understand this, So this Prabhuji told us that, you look at verse number 9.16.29 and 9.16.33. Over there it says that Vishwamitra Muni had 101 sons, of whom the middle one was known as Madhu Chanda. In relation to him, all of the sons were celebrated as Madhu Chandas. And then the other verse, he says, when requested by the father to accept Shuna as the eldest son, the elder 50 of the Madhu Chandas, the sons of Vishwamitra, did not agree. Therefore, Vishwamitra became angry and cursed them. May all of you bad sons become malicious, he said. being opposed to Vedic, the principles of Vedic culture. So that area in South India, was ruled by these people. But the reason they got purified, Shuddhyantita Tasmai Prabhu Vishnave Namaha, is because of the preaching of the great acharyas like Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya and Lord Chaitanya visiting there, that they were so fallen that they took to the process of this Krishna consciousness and became purified also. So that was a really interesting point that Prabhuji made. I just wanted to share that.
That's good. It's an instance of a nation or region being purified.
Yeah, practical experience.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think there's some other questions. Going down the line.
Prabhu, just to add on to the point you're making about, in the purport it says to establish Varnashram institution is not practical.
Yeah.
And it says in the present social circumstances, something like that. Basically, I just wanted to add on to your point that like the Krishna consciousness movement changes the social circumstances to a point which Varnashram Dharma can be established.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just, all right, let's Varnashram, then it's like Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and then it's like, well, what does that mean? Like, what's a Shudra, like Vaishya, what's a Shudra? There's like so many different intricacies of that. And then Varnashram also isn't just like Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, but also Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. There's no conception of ashram at all in the West. At zero, none. There's no Brahmacharya, Grihastha, like what does that mean? Like, retire. I mean, pretty much it's just like, whatever you grow up, you go to school, you get a job, make money, and then like you get a good job so you can retire when you're a certain age, and then get your pension, and then go to the condos in Florida or like Bahamas or somewhere, and just enjoy life in the sun, or like some retirement home. But no conception. You can't establish Varnashram with people that don't even have that proper knowledge.
But it can be established once the social situation is changed.
That's why Prabhupada wanted to start those farms, so it was the template, and then build it up. Isaac had a question, but then he's gone. Yeah. Any question, Manoj? Oh, he's coming back. All right. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. When Prabhupada say that ISKCON is meant to instruct the leaders of the society.
Yeah, he said it in the purport.
Yeah. He's referring to literally go to the current leaders and cultivate them, or cultivate, the next generation of leaders in the society?
Both. Both. We cultivate the next leaders in society by distributing books and preaching Krishna consciousness. I mean, like if one wanted to specifically go in that field, he could. I mean, I think there's like certain universities that like whatever, like they like cater more towards like the leaders of society, or like whatever, like the governments of things. It kind of seems like whatever, you kind of just pull people out of whatever, and then they kind of throw them into the Congress or something. But but Prabhupada wanted everybody to be educated. And as far as like preaching to the actual leaders now, Prabhupada wanted that. There was one instance of, that's mentioned in the Transcendental Diary. There was one devotee, Pravikarajacharya, I think was his name. But he was preaching to some like the king's daughter or something like that. And I forget where. Do you remember where that was? Was it in Afghanistan or something, or Iraq or something? One devotee was preaching to like the leaders of the society, doing the yoga thing.
That was in Iran.
Iran, okay. So he was preaching.
When the king was there.
Yeah.
That was during the kings were still ruling at that time.
Yeah.
Iran now became a republic.
Yeah, because they got thrown out, and that happened like in the 80s, and then Rameshwar Prabhu was talking about that.
He was preaching to the princess,
Yeah.
daughter of the king.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Prabhupada wanted both. So there's emphasis in that. And then cultivating and speaking. I mean, it's like one of those things where you get into it, then you kind of understand. It takes one that's like intellectual, like good with people, and able to explain things and understand how to apply things and all that. takes a very strong personality to do that. But the idea is that that person would speak, what it says in the Bhagavatam, and then that person would try to like enact those things in society. So you have to know what it says in the Bhagavatam to do that, in the Shastras.
For instance, I know that Prabhupada himself, when he was present here on earth, he was doing that, preaching to big leaders, and professors, teachers, politicians, and leaders of other religions also. But, well, obviously because he is a pure devotee of the Lord, he has this Shakti to do that. But who else can do something like that?
Well,
because we say, for instance, sorry.
It's not impossible. The thing is that if we follow the instruction of the spiritual master, then we can become empowered. It's not that just like Srila Prabhupada came and then he did some things and now it's like impossible. We can never do that. We may not be as like, like a towering acharya as Srila Prabhupada, but we can, take his instructions seriously and carry it. Otherwise, if Srila Prabhupada came and gave instructions that are impossible to fulfill and to complete, then it's kind of like useless. It's like, we'll never be able to achieve that. But it's like, that's the mercy of the devotees, that they give these instructions that are like very difficult, and then we dedicate our lives to them. And then it's Krishna's mercy and the Guru's mercy that they get fulfilled. So.
I would say by his mercy we can do way more than him.
I don't remember exactly if there's a direct quote by that. There's a
No, there's a quote, Prabhupada saying, my disciples should do more than
Double.
There you go. So the instruction's there.
Hare Krishna. One more thing is, what do you think? For instance, in my personal case, I'm not able to bring just one single soul to the Sunday program. I've been distributing books and inviting persons, and they always say, "Yeah, I'll be there. Those books are nice. This and that," but they never come. No one person I'm able to bring. It's because I don't know, I'm very impure or what.
Yeah, you're not the only one. Not the only one. I was telling, this is the last thing I'll say, but one devotee, we were talking about that yesterday actually. They were saying, like, I hope somebody comes. We're doing so much, but nobody's like joined in a long time. And I told him, I said, we got our whole life to see what happens. So it's like, you got to be patient and wait. We got our whole life to see, and then at the end of it, if it's like no one joined, it's like, all right, whatever. But we got a whole life. We got plenty of time to see. You got at least like 50, 60 years. So, yeah, a lot of. Otherwise we just keep cooking for a Sunday feast. Alrighty. Srimad Bhagavatam.